Continuing now with Joe Garagiola's Baseball is a Funny Game. And when we ended last session, we were in the middle of, we're about 2/3 of the way through 2/3 or 3/4 maybe through the chapter 9, the Social Security numbers. We'll continue with that chapter now and should conclude it in this session. Another Social Security number is the public address announcer. When Tex Rickard in Brooklyn announced that, quote, a little boy has been found lost, the crowd realized that the public address announcer is part of the game too. Tex, during my career, did more than any of the other public address announcers to make baseball a funny game. Tex, a well-to-do businessman, took the job as a sideline to keep him close to baseball. For 33 years, he did the announcing for $5 a game until President O'Malley found out about it and raised him to $10. He was held in such high esteem that he was honored with a Tex Rickard night in his beloved Ebbets Field. Once there were some coats draped along the left field railing, and the umpire asked Rickard to tell the fans to get them off. "Attention, please," came Rickard's call. "Will the fans behind the rail in left field please remove their clothing?" Tex was asked to make a pregame announcement during a ladies' day rush. The Dodger ticket manager wanted to keep the rotunda clear for sales to the reserve seat customers. Tex's message over the loudspeaker came out, "General admission and ladies on sale on Sullivan Place." "Please do not go on the playing field at the end of the game," was always his last request. "Use any exit that leads to the street." Players took great delight in agitating Tex when he asked for first names. Gene Freese, an infielder, still answers to the name Augie. When Tex asked the Pirate players for his first name, they told him Augie to tease Augie Donatelli behind the plate. Ham Fisher, creator of Joe Palooka, was a great baseball and particularly a Dodger fan. Joe Palooka was a comic strip back in the day. Rickard once publicly thanked Joe Palooka for his interest in the Dodgers. The field announcer relays information on controversial plays to the press box and serves as the field contact for the press. In many parks, he works closely with the boys working inside the scoreboard. The scoreboard man in Brooklyn couldn't get the name of the pitcher for the Chicago Cubs over at the Polo Grounds. Announcer Tex Rickard called the press box to find out. He was asked to wait a minute. His source returned to the phone and this conversation took place. Press box. "Tex?" "Yes." "Bob Rush." "Who?" "Bob Rush." "Oh, yes, Bob, how are you?" Pat Piper is a Chicago North Side legend. A restaurant waiter by night, there are no lights in Wrigley Field. Now, that's, of course, changed in 1988 when lights were added and night games began. But anyway, this is 1960. A restaurant waiter by night, there are no lights in Wrigley Field. Piper has been the field announcer for the Cubs for more than 50 years. Pat is the only announcer to continue the old tradition after giving the lineups of dramatically announcing, "Play ball." Pat also claims the record for lost children found. In Cincinnati, the field announcer sits close to the visiting bench, and the players join in his routine. Between the name, number, and position, you can hear the players helping out. "Who? What's his number? Where does he play?" And then a surprised, "Oh!" When I quit playing, I went to the other side of the fence and joined the Society of the Press and Radio Box. This is forbidden land to the fans. Only working press is allowed in the press box. But at some parks, working press is often interpreted to mean banker, baker, and candlestick maker. The colony is made up of home and visiting newspapermen. Western Union operators, the only women allowed in the press box. A scoreboard operator, the official scorer, publicity men for both clubs, and club officials. At a World Series or All-Star game, only members with accredited press badges get in, but others try. The best attempt was made by a gentleman who claimed to be the sports editor of the Congressional Record. The radio booth is usually apart from the press box. In some parks, such as the Coliseum in Los Angeles, it is more like a phone booth than a radio booth. The scoreboard operator is a button man. St. Louis has the all-star scoreboard operator in Lou Adamy. Many claim that he has the umpire's call on the big board in left field before the umpire makes the decision. At his job, more than 20 years, he has studied the mannerisms of the umpires until a preliminary telltale move tells him whether the call will be a ball or a strike. In front of him is a button-filled panel board. With the dexterity of a concert pianist, he hits the right button. And now, section 2. So, section 1, the very beginning of the chapter, which has lasted, 22 pages, said of scouts, general managers, schedule makers, groundskeepers, and others behind the scenes. Now we get into section 2 of chapter 9, the Social Security numbers. Section 2 is of official scorers, sports writers, broadcasters, and others who also serve. The official scorer is a newspaper man appointed by the league. In many cities, the job rotates, and each series or so, a new scorer is on duty. He is paid for this extra work by the league. At his fingertip is the rule book for proper interpretation, but mostly it's a matter of his judgment as he flashes the red light for error or green for hit. In St. Louis, Ellis Veach of the East St. Louis Journal is the permanent official scorer and one of the best in either league. The job of the official scorer is a thankless one, similar to that of the umpires. An error will anger the hitter. If the hit sign is flashed for the home team hitter, the visiting team immediately charges favoritism. If an error is charged on the visitor's hit, the scorer gets it from two sides. The visitor, claiming he is protecting the home team, and the erring player claims he is protecting the pitcher's earned run average at the expense of his fielding average. We don't get the hits on the road, so we should get them at home is a much-used sentence on the bench. Players often show their disgust at a call by waving towels from the bench. Sometimes conferences are held and calls made to the field to get the views of the players on a questionable play. It is not uncommon to have a hit changed the next day to an error or vice versa. One of the scorer stories involves the rookie who had 3 hits in 4 times at bat, but the morning paper box score showed only 2 hits. The next day, the rookie asked the scorer, "How come I didn't get 3 hits yesterday?" "You got 3 hits yesterday." "Oh yeah, the paper said 2 for 4. That was a typographical error." "What do you mean error?" shouted the rookie. 2 were clean signals to the left and 1 was right up the middle. All the teams have newspapermen traveling with them. Most newspapers pay their reporters' expenses, so they will feel no obligation in writing their stories. Players are not concerned with deadlines, and many a reporter's hopeful lead ends up on the floor as the apparent victory turns into defeat. To make his deadline, a writer may have to anticipate results. Typewriters are pounded constantly as running accounts are turned out. Some writers never see the finish of the game because they must head for the clubhouse to pick up quotable comments. There's usually one man from each paper traveling with the team, although some papers send an extra man along to do feature material or a daily column. When a crucial series approaches, the crew gets bigger, and the sports editor appears on the scene. At an All-Star or World Series game, it sometimes seems to take the whole staff to do the job. The regular writers live like the players, staying in the same hotels and using the same transportation. While many friendships of mutual value are formed, it is always interesting when a critical story is read by the player concerned. A Yankee once chased a newspaperman through a string of railroad cars, threatening to throw him off the train. Ebbets Field was often the scene of shoving and grabbing because of extra vivid descriptions and comments. While clubhouses are open to newspapermen, a good many individual newspapermen have been barred. Some managers set a cooling-off period of about 15 minutes after every game to allow players a chance to let off steam before the press is admitted. Once, one newspaperman who gave the players as many stories as he got from them was the late Chili Doyle of the Pittsburgh Star-Telegraph. Chili lived only a couple of blocks from Forbes Field, but he frequently telephoned the park before leaving home. "Is it raining there?" "No, the sun's shining." "It's shining here, too," Chili would tell the operator and leave for the park. On one long spring training trip, Chili traveled and roomed with Al Abrams, sports editor of the Post-Gazette. Arriving at Griffith Stadium, Chili saw Al leaning against the batting cages. "Al," he called, running over to shake hands. "When did you get in?" When the Pirates took to airplane travel, Chili reported, "The Pirates will fly by air this season." I'm going to back up. Sometimes my mouth gets ahead of my brain, and I don't pick up on that. On one long spring training trip, Chili traveled and roomed with Al Abrams, sports editor of the Post-Gazette. Arriving at Griffith Stadium, Chili saw Al leaning against the batting cage. "Al," he called, running over to shake hands. "When did you get in?" Okay. When the Pirates took to airplane travel, Chili reported, "The Pirates will fly by air this season." And once he came into the front office for a special press conference. and spotted Mr. Ricky's store teeth in a glass. Are they false? He asked. Rookie writers often betray their inexperience. After Harvey Haddix pitched the longest perfect game in baseball history, 36 consecutive batters retired, a rookie writer asked him if that was the best game he ever pitched. One of the press questions every veteran athlete must answer is, when are you going to quit? What's going to tell you when it's time? In one discussion on this question, one fellow said the legs go first, another said the eyes, a third said the reflexes, etc. Fred Apostoli, the former middleweight champion, declared they were all wrong. You first notice it in your newspaper write-ups, he said. Some time ago, Bob Addy of the Washington Post painted a composite picture of the sports writer. As I recall, it went something like this. He is quick to defend and slow to offend. He can count on the fingers of one hand the athletes who ever thanked him for a story, but if he had a dime for every guy who threatened him for critical stories, he would be too rich to write sports. A football coach may have more than 100 plays that his team can execute with precision, but the sports writer doesn't hesitate to pontificate on the coach's strategy. He figures all coaches and field managers and managing editors with their brains knocked out, or maybe it's the other way around. Excuse me. He lives in a beautiful world where it's always game time and yesterday's tragedies have faded like ripples on a lake. He is the eternal juvenile who wouldn't trade places with anybody. He's Pagliacci, the Pied Piper, Walter Mitty, Peter Pan, and Jack Armstrong, the All-American boy. In recent years, baseball teams have hired publicity men to work with the press and the public. Their showcase, as far as the fans are concerned, is the different nights staged by the home club. Be it a Little League night or the reunion of Hall of Famers, the details are worked out by the publicity men. Red Patterson, then with the Yankees, demonstrated the ingenuity of these Social Security numbers when he came up with a tape measure for a Mickey Mantle home run. Though it sounds simple and inevitable, he was the first. Most publicity men are former newspaper men, ever alert for a story. Jim Toomey of the Cardinals described the premature Musial 3,000 hit party, Stan got it the next day, as, quote, Musial's 3,000 hit party marked down to 2,999. Among other things, the publicity men send questionnaires to all their players so they will be able to answer questions about them or volunteer information that will find its way into the newspapers. Joe O'Toole of the Pirates, while publicity man for the New Orleans team, once sent out a questionnaire with the usual routine questions. Of what feat are you most proud? One answer he got back, I'm a catcher, I have nothing to be proud of. To the Dodgers questionnaire about denominational preference, the Dodger rookie wrote, I like to be called Benny. With the Dodgers is a publicity man and demon statistician named Alan Roth. Alan hands out the current averages and a sheet of team information to the press, but his big job is to keep pitch-by-pitch statistics for his team. Each pitch is charted and the result is recorded. Should his manager ask how important it is for a batter to be ahead of the pitcher or what happens when he's behind the pitcher, Roth provides the figures. Using the 1952 tabulations, which are not obsolete, his up-to-date figures are for confidential use only. Roy Campanella was a .339 hitter when he was ahead of the pitcher with a count of 1 ball and no strikes, 2-0, 2-1, 3-0, or 3-1. But Campy hit only .188 when he was behind the pitcher with counts of 1 strike and no balls, 2 strikes and 1 ball, and 2 strikes and 2 balls. Similar figures on other hitters during the 52 season. Hodges hit .325 and .211. Snyder, .389 and .244. When Joe Black, a star pitcher that year, was ahead of the hitters, the batting average against him was .129. When behind the hitters, it was .258. Erskine showed .154 and .354. The next day's starting pitcher for the Dodgers charts his own game on the bench using a system developed by Walter Alston. This chart will show the tendency of the various opposing hitters against different kinds of pitches. Alston constantly checked with statistician Roth to see how the bench book balanced with his figures. As a player gets older, his reflexes get slower. Roth's figures show the rate at which a player's reflexes slow down. Year by year, the player's hits may be moving towards center field. For example, a strong left-handed pull hitter is now hitting .312, but the majority of his hits are now between center and left center, while they used to be from center to the right field line. Still a valuable man, but here's an indication that this may be the year to trade him. Almost everything about baseball is measured or recorded. The swing of Ted Kluszewski, while a member of the Cincinnati Reds, was clocked at 116 miles per hour. Gil Hodges and Duke Snider were clocked at 114 miles per hour. In a game between the Washington Senators and the Kansas City Athletics, sports writer Dick Wade of the Kansas City Star, grew up reading him, clocked only 10 minutes of actual action during a 2-hour and 38-minute game. Does a curveball really curve, or is it an optical illusion? Whitlow Wyatt, a great curveball pitcher, said, "I'll tell you what, you stand behind a tree 60 feet, 6 inches from me, and I'll whomp you to death with an optical illusion." Dr. Lyman Briggs, Director Emeritus of the National Bureau of Standards, said that a curveball curves as much as 17.5 inches. An aeronautical engineer at Case Tech claims that a baseball can curve 5 to 8 inches in any direction, less than half of Dr. Briggs's claim. The organist atop the ballpark has in recent years become a standard part of the game at most parks. My wife was the organist at Busch Stadium. To her, it was always a challenge to play the right song at the right time. After a musical home run, she played My Man. Wally Moon's blasts were followed by How High the Moon. The year 1956, Milwaukee lost the heartbreaking game in St. Louis that ended their pennant chase. They were accompanied off the field with the sympathetic understanding in Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. And I can hear Doris Day singing it now as he writes, as I read that. The voice of the switchboard operator is known to thousands of fans. Whenever the dark cloud appears, she answers the nightmare question, "Is the game still on?" 1,000 times or so without jumping into the snake pit. Answering queries as to whether certain players are going to play is part of her routine. She has heard a blast as to why the club doesn't start extra inning games earlier. And fans sometimes call the ballpark to ask if there is a big line at the downtown ticket office. It takes 25 players with numbers on their uniforms to make a Major League ball club, and it takes 400 Social Security numbers at each ballpark to make the game what it is to the fans. It takes about 1 million fans a season at each ballpark to make any of it possible. Each ballpark has its own atmosphere given it by its own fans. As a player, it was always a thrill to walk into Ebbets Field. The fans were alive. As the late Commissioner of Baseball, Judge Landis, said, "This doggone park is like a pinball machine." The Dodger Symphony followed you back with musical accompaniment after a ground out and gave you a drum roll as you sat down. When you struck out and walked to the water cooler, you were drinking to How Dry I Am. Cookie Levigetto had a personal rooter who would always let sail a barrage of balloons when he came to the plate. The most famous of the Dodger fans was Hilda Chester. Hilda had a voice that sounded like the 10-second buzzer at Madison Square Garden. When she let out, you heard every word. Pete Reiser, the former Dodger star, tells of a game at Ebbets Field while DeRocher was managing. Then a rookie, Pete handed Leo a note in the dugout. It read, "Kurt Davis doesn't have a thing today. Get him out of there. Get him out quick." Leo read the note and jumped up and motioned to the bullpen. He began to moan aloud to himself. If that guy wants to manage, why doesn't he manage down here or keep his nose out of it? Reiser asked Leo what he was talking about. Leo said, "I'm talking about the guy who gave you this note. I'm talking about MacPhail. That's who I'm talking about." "MacPhail didn't give me that note. Hilda Chester gave me that note," Pete told him. The Pittsburgh Pirate fan is a patient fan. He is satisfied if he gets the feeling that his players are putting out their best. When the club lost 112 games in 1952, not once did the fans show their disappointment to the players. Disgusted with the front office? Yes. But they felt the players were doing the best they could and just weren't good enough to compete. In 1959, after the Pirates lost the first 5 games, a rabbit appeared on the field during a game with the Milwaukee Braves. The Pirates won the game, and the fans presented the team with 2 rabbits, appropriately named Peter Pirates and Bucks, B-U-C-S, Bunny. As I've said, while a Cardinal, I was booed by the Pirate fans for an incident with a Pirate player. But once I had a Pirate uniform on, all was forgiven and forgotten. The Chicago Cub fan seems to be a transient. It is hard to put your finger on any special characteristic. A true Cub fan can never be a White Sox fan too, and the loyal ones stick. But most fans at Wrigley Field seem to be transients on a sightseeing tour who just stopped in to say hello. The Philadelphia fan is the worst fan in the league. This will upset the true blue Philly fans, but the feeling the players have is that the fans there learn to say boo as their first word. They have the loudest grandstand jockeys. Though it be the city of brotherly love, the loudest boo birds are perched in Connie Mack Stadium. The Cincinnati fan is conservative. The good burgers give the visiting player the impression that you told me to save my money to come out and watch you, and look how you play. They have their opinions, and they express them. In Milwaukee, going to the ball game is a social event. The fashionable place to be seen is County Stadium. The Braves are knights on white chargers that can do no wrong. A slam against a Brave is a personal attack on the fan. Though it has simmered down some, I think the Milwaukee enthusiasm for the Braves and Major League Ball will endure through bad years as well as good. This was 1960 that he wrote this. By 1965, the Braves were pulling out of Milwaukee and after the 65 season and landed in Atlanta the following season. But Milwaukee got a team a few years later, the Brewers, who this year are leading all of Major League Baseball. San Francisco fans, like the Milwaukee fans, are new to Major League Baseball. They have a good knowledge of the game and are loyal rooters, but they're there to see their beloved Giants win. Gone are the real inside baseball discussions that were so common among fans at the Polo Grounds. When the visiting pitcher gets in trouble, the Giant fans will pull out a handkerchief and wave it to upset him. All the old cliches from high school days are heard during a game. The feeling that the visiting team is an enemy is apparent here. Each loss is a catastrophe. Each win calls for a victory party. It's new, and they like it. In Los Angeles, the game is important, but everybody is constantly checking the stands to see what movie stars are there tonight. At the Coliseum, the stands are so far from the field that from some seats, the game must look recreated. It is a carnival air, but nothing like Ebbets Field. There's more rooting for the visiting team here because of transplanted fans. Quote, I used to live in St. Louis and I'm still a Cardinal fan, end quote. I leave the St. Louis fan until last because I think a local boy gets a distorted impression of the home team fans. I was born and raised in St. Louis and always dreamed of playing with the Cardinals. Having gone through it, having watched Herman Waymeyer in his own Cincinnati and Adele Innis in his own Philadelphia, I wouldn't want my youngsters to go through it. As a local boy, you are really public property. Everybody feels they know you. To other players, a good day means congratulations, but the local boy got lucky. A bad day shows them your true picture, and many do not hesitate to tell you. Fred Haney, in a speech before the Junior Chamber of Commerce in Cincinnati, put it as bluntly as this. All you guys are jealous of Waymeyer because he is making more money than you are, and the way you trim him down to your size is by booing him at the ballpark. Somebody remembers every Sandlot strikeout and spreads the word that the local boy is lucky to be in the big leagues. I remember a game where I struck him out when he was in high school, and I wasn't even a pitcher. He never did get a hit off us when we played in the CYC League, when he played in the CYC League. His batting average was about 150 when we played together. It's only your friends who see you as a big leaguer. To most, you represent a lucky guy who got there because strings were pulled, and you represent the Sandlot strikeout or pop-up of 10 years ago. Every hometown boy in the big leagues wants to be a good guy and tries hard. He gives a baseball to a friend and makes enemies. You give a ball to my cousin who went to night school with you, and I'm his neighbor. Say you can't do it, and immediately you become a big head. Meanwhile, you are too embarrassed to ask for more, and they are costing you $2.50 each. You are allowed 2 passes to each game. Because a fellow delivers groceries to your cousin, is he entitled to see the game free? Say you can't do it, and you not only have him going against you, but your cousin accuses you of playing the role of the big shot sloughing off a lowly peasant. During the off-season, you can make 14 appearances a week and turn one down, and you hear, sure, you're a big leaguer, so you don't know me now. As a visiting player, the only thing the hometown fan knows about you is the headline achievements. Unless he memorizes every box score, the errors are lost in the shuffle. As a hometown boy, he either sees you in action, reads it, hears it on radio or TV, or gets it by word of mouth, and they're ready for you. In a strange town, people seem more friendly than they do in your own hometown. That's baseball, I guess. And we come to the end of Chapter 9, the Social Security numbers. In our next session, we will take up with the very last chapter in the book, Chapter 10, the Banquet Trail. And I remember this chapter from reading it many times years ago, and it is a fun one. It is a fun chapter, as most of these are. So we'll take up with Chapter 10, the Banquet Trail, of Joe Garagiola's Baseball is a Funny Game in the next session. Thank you for watching.